Today, we're going to be learning about World War II in the later stages of the war, and particularly should the atomic bomb have been dropped on Japan, or were there other ways to end the war. So let's set up. It's mid-1945. The Axis powers, well, Germany and Axis powers of Germany, Italy, and Japan. Germany and Italy have surrendered in Europe, and it is only Japan left. And Japan at this point cannot produce enough materials to make war in terms of oil, in terms of raw materials, that's steel, aluminum, food. So people are starving, and it's only a matter of time until the war is going to end. And major events in 1945 that have happened are the Battle of Iwo Jima, which took place in February, was one of the last major islands of the island hopping campaign that the United States Navy and Marine Corps undertook. And it was very costly. It cost over 6,000 lives and also injured approximately 20 more thousand lives, all for about 14 square miles. This base was key for injured bombers to come back and land safely from their home base in Tinian Island. And the famous picture of the flag being raised on Mount Suribachi is right there. That's Mount Suribachi, that one lone island. And these battles were this battle was very gruesome. The Japanese actually waited till all Americans, not all Americans, but most American forces were on the ground. And once they got stuck in the volcanic soil, opened fire upon them when they were all stationed there and could not move. They had an intricate cave system set up on the mountain that defended most of the island. And the next major battle was the Battle of Okinawa, which took place in roughly May of 1945. And this was a bigger island, and it was a lot more costly. Over 20,000 dead and over 55,000 wounded. This battle forced the United States to use flamethrowers extensively. As you see, there's a tank converted to a flamethrower to get the Japanese out of the tunnels that they have submerged themselves in. And the Japanese also suffered heavy losses, with over 110,000 people killed. Japanese citizens were committing suicide, jumping off cliffs, as American GIs watched them. So this was a very gruesome part of war, and the United States knew that this was going to be a very costly invasion if they decided to invade the main islands of Japan. So this is the map at the end of the war. As you can see, the island hopping campaign started in Guadalcanal and Tarahumara and made us all the way up to Iwo Jima and Okinawa. In Saipan, the Mariana Islands, and Guam, this is where the main U.S. bomber bases were, where they would launch offensive strikes. This was possible through new technology such as B-29, which is the most advanced bomber in the United States arsenal. It was pressurized, which meant it was temperature controlled inside, didn't have to wear bulky masks and or jackets to keep warm and cool. It also had a longer range and a higher bomb capacity, so it could be a more effective bomber over the target. Since this, the United States used B-29 in bombing Japan in 1945, mostly from the bases on Tinian Island, which you can see here. It had multiple bases on Tinian Island, which is where the atomic bombs were launched from. They used strategies such as flying at 8,000 feet instead of high altitude because the Japanese anti-aircraft artillery could not reach the higher altitudes. But yet the small arms fire could not reach 8,000 feet, so it found a sweet spot. That was dodged by General Curtis LeMay of the United States Army Air Force. And one of the strategies that were used was firebombing in Japan. This was devastating, put over 1 million people homeless. In the city of Tokyo alone, killed thousands. As you can see, the looks just like all wooden buildings were leveled. Only buildings that were standing were concrete and or steel. And the middle picture right here is Tokyo on fire. They achieved this by dropping napalm and other flammable liquids and dropping incendiary bombs. Basically, the napalm stuck to buildings, and once it was ignited, it went up in a very hot flame that was very hard to put out. And the Tokyo Fire Department had their pipes broke in about 20 or 30 different locations. So it was impossible to get water to get these put out. So they eventually just burned until they had no more fuel to burn. The Manhattan Project was the United States code word for the atomic bomb development program. It had many different locations, such as Oak Ridge, Tennessee, Los Alamos, New Mexico, and also in eastern Washington. They successfully created two bombs called Little Boy and Fat Man. Two different methods of uranium and plutonium, with plutonium being the more destructive of the two. And the atomic bomb was successfully tested in the New Mexico desert in 1945. And there was also a great deal of energy and money put into this program, how to develop some of the largest buildings ever built. Also, the Tennessee Valley Project was damming up valleys that existed in the Appalachian Mountains for power generation. And this was thought to be going to the aluminum factories, which a good portion did, but a lot of it was directed to the Oak Ridge lab in Tennessee for nuclear fission. Nuclear reactors. So, should the bomb have been dropped on Japan? Well, Operation Olympic was the invasion of Japan, set to take place in late 1945. Would have involved the USSR in it too, since the USSR agreed to invade Japan 3 months after the war, since they had a beef with them to clear up since the Sino-Russian War in 1919. And the estimated casualties they varied drastically. They could not give President Truman at the time an exact number on how many people would die. They ranged from 250,000 to 100,000, some over 1 million wounded. So they did not know what the exact number would be, but they knew it was going to be drastic. They knew it was going to be a heavy loss of life, and we know this in part because the United States military ordered Purple Hearts. They ordered enough Purple Hearts for this invasion that we still use them today. They lasted through the Korean War, the Vietnam War, the Gulf War, and then both wars in Iraq and Afghanistan. And we still have enough left over. So the government expected this war, this invasion, to be very intense and very costly. Alright, and some cons to it would be the first country to drop an atomic bomb on people in the world. It would cost hundreds of thousands of lives of Japanese citizens. So this also created a dilemma in President Truman's mind. But if we look back to what happened earlier, we firebombed Tokyo. Hundreds of thousands of people died in those bombings. Millions of people homeless. So how is this different than the fire bombings? Well, it's one bomb. It's almost psychological to have one bomb. All you need is one plane to destroy a city, rather than hundreds or even thousands of planes that it took to destroy Tokyo. So President Truman faced a lot of decisions to make, and he also had the Soviet Union factor be involved. If the Soviet Union helped invade Japan, they would want a piece of post-war Japan, much like Germany did, and the Cold War is already starting there with the Berlin crisis and the Berlin airlift. So there's a lot for President Truman to think about in terms of whether the bomb should be dropped or not. And the bomb was dropped. There's the mushroom cloud rising a mile above the surface. As you can see, total destruction of the Hiroshima. Just absolutely incinerated it. But anything within a mile of the bomb being dropped was almost incinerated. And a great distance after that suffered radiation burns, which we will see in a second. So, my question is, can you have this picture of the nurse kissing the sailor without either dead Americans invading or a burnt Japanese schoolboy in a burned out schoolhouse?